How's everybody doing? Thank you. This is my first time in Oklahoma, or actually Oklahoma City. I was in Tulsa once. And anybody from Tulsa? I don't remember you. No, that was about like 25 years ago. So I came here from Orlando. I landed yesterday morning, and yes, we survived the hurricane. I lost part of the fence, but it's an old fence, and the landlord's going to replace it anyway, so we're all good. One of the things that I've been talking to other people about, like Matt and Jennifer and I had a discussion yesterday about tornadoes. And they're like, yeah, when there's a tornado warning here, we all go home. And I was like, really? In Indiana, because we get a lot of tornadoes, when they have a tornado warning on TV, we turn down the TV so we can maybe hear it coming. And then we moved to Orlando 2 years ago, where not only do we have hurricanes, I didn't mean to do that yet. Not only do we have hurricanes, but during Irma, there were hurricanes inside, or tornadoes inside the hurricane. Like, Florida just seems to be like the biggest screw you state, because not only do we have deadly storms trying to kill us, but there are like deadly mini storms inside the storm. So it was it's a night and day difference. We have things that want to eat me in the state. You don't go into the water in Florida at all because there are gators and they will eat you. So I miss Indiana a lot of times. I think Oklahoma would be much safer than Florida because at least there's nothing trying to eat me. So what I wanted to do today was I wanted to talk about the future of digital marketing, and one of the things that I get to do is talk about my past in digital marketing. As Kellen mentioned, sure enough's going to I've written a couple of books. I got to write a book with a dirty word in the title. I was very proud when Barnes & Noble put No Bullshit Social Media on the new releases shelf, right at the eye level of an impressionable 6-year-old. So like kids would walk in and say, "Mommy, what's that word mean?" And my mom was not very proud of that. I was extremely proud. I am working on the 3rd edition of Branding Yourself. We'll back up. Anybody know Jason Falls? I wrote this with Jason Falls back in 2011. 11. And then I wrote this with Kyle Lacey, and we're doing the 3rd edition. It should be out next month.
Yeah, seriously.
My greatest fear as a public speaker is accidentally wear one of these into the bathroom. Did y'all ever see Police Squad? That scene from Police Squad? I don't have to say what it is. That scene from Police Squad. That is my biggest fear. So I talk a lot about content marketing, and I do content marketing. And one of the things that I always hate about content marketing advice is, the 5 simple rules of content marketing. And rule number 1 is always write good content. And I always think that's stupid. That's like telling somebody, do a good job today. Okay? My wife, before I left to come here, she said, be safe. No? I mean, when we write good content, have you ever chosen to not do a good job? I'm going to suck at my job today. I'm supposed to write this blog post, and I'm going to make it terrible. Anybody ever done that? No. We all do a good job because we're programmed to do a good job. It's just the pride of our work. We do a good job. We do our best job. So write good content is a stupid strategy. We're not going to talk about that today. What we are going to talk about is sort of the history of content marketing, digital marketing. When I say digital marketing and content marketing, to me they are interchangeable. I know a lot of you do something else, but for me, in my world, everything comes down to content marketing, what people read, see, and watch. Read, hear, and watch. And so let's talk about where do we see content marketing first appear. And a lot of people like Joe Pulizzi, Content Marketing Institute, he always points to The Furrow, which was a magazine that was put out by John Deere. It wasn't a sales tool, it wasn't a catalog. They just wanted to help people be good farmers. Why? Because ultimately good farmers are successful farmers. Successful farmers have money. Farmers with money buy John Deere. they're going to patronize the company that helped them do a better job. And so they've been publishing the Furrow since about 1895. It's still going on. They're still publishing it. But this is regarded as one of the first content marketing pieces out there. The Michelin Guide. You know, when you hear people talk about a certain restaurant having a Michelin star, this is what they're talking about. The Michelin Guide, it's created by the Michelin Tire Company because they wanted people to go out and travel on their tires, so they created the Michelin Guide. Another content marketing piece. Even Lego. Anybody have kids? Anybody step on a Lego in the middle of the night? Lego Club is a magazine for Lego kid enthusiasts. And my son, who is now 14, he's kind of outgrown Legos. He knew to the day when this thing was supposed to show up. And you know, it's a twice monthly. Is that bi-monthly or is that semi-monthly? Every 2 months it would appear, and he always knew when it was going to appear in the mailbox and when it didn't. Like, it's supposed to show up on the 5th, and today's the 6th, and where's the magazine? He'd come to me, he's like, where's my magazine? I don't know. So I actually tweeted them a couple of times, where's Ben's magazine? It's on its way. So this is another form of content marketing. They're doing articles about how to build all these cool things that you need their kids to build, but he's reading all these things and kind of taking in all of this information, and what it really ended up doing was not only helping him do Lego better, but it made him a raving fan, and he would save money to go buy the thing that he read about in the magazine. Now he's a musician, and he plays guitar, and so instead of looking at like $30 Lego sets, he's looking at $500 guitars, and save your money. So, what about the history of the internet? In, let's see, it was July 15th, 1969 at UCLA. Anybody remember that day? Notable day? It was the day they first connected 2 computers together and created the world's first network. And it happened at UCLA back in July 1969. And as legend has it, the guy on the one end went to type hi, and he typed the letter H, and it crashed. But it also tells me that the internet is 48 years old. I am older than the internet. It was a very sad day for me when I finally realized that. My kids think I'm like older than the wheel and dirt, but I'm at least older than the internet. Anybody else older than the internet? Anybody older than me? You sit next to me at lunch. I'll look young. But we went from that, and it wasn't even the internet, they were just networks. And then we had BBSs. And then, anybody remember this screen, America Online? Anybody get the floppy disks in the mail? I loved it when they sent the floppy disks because I used them, and I would like put a new label on it and write whatever I had on there. And I had a thick stack of disks. I was so mad when they started shipping CDs because like, what am I going to do with this? I got 57 silver coasters. I once glued a stack of them together just to see what would happen, and I just had a thick stack of CDs. It wasn't anything special. But I joined AOL early enough. I was like member 830,000 something. And it was big, big news when AOL broke the 1 million member number. Like, NPR covered it. They had a 5-minute story on how big AOL is. And I remember people worrying about, what is this online thing going to do to our communities? Now people aren't going to go outside and talk to each other. They're going to stay inside on the internet, and they're going to play around on this AOL thing. And I gave a TEDx talk about 5 years ago about how, if anything, this created our community. Anybody collect marbles? No? One? You collect marbles?
I did.
Did you know that there is a marble collection society? There's a group of marble collectors, and they meet every year in Amana, Iowa. Anybody collect beer cans? No one? When I was 8, this tells you what kind of kid I was. When I was 8, I started collecting beer cans. So like I would tell my parents, I want this kind of can, and then they would go to the store. I didn't drink it, of course. They drank it, but I made them drink a lot of shitty beer just so I could have beer cans. And they would just like indulge whatever whim. Well, Hams, I want the Hams. And Hams is a terrible beer. Blatz, anybody remember Blatz? That's awful. I had several Blatz cans. But back then, to even know that there was a Beer Can Collectors of America organization, you had to know somebody who was aware of its existence. And you would meet them and they would tell you, yeah, there's a whole group of us. There's it's actually an international association of beer can collectors. And then this whole world opens up to you. Same thing with marble collecting. You had to know that there were people who had formed a group to collect marbles. And then to meet once a year in Amana, Iowa. That's where they make the Amana appliances. But you had to know. Well, now, thanks to AOL and then the internet, you got to find them. We built communities online. You think about all the weird things that you like to do as a hobby, and you think, oh, nobody does this. And you do a search online, and there's somebody who does that. There's a guy in England who takes pictures of model trains. But he's like a top-notch photographer, and he's a top-notch model train killer. He's like a giant in his field, literally. And he takes these pictures of model trains, and there are other people who love taking photos of model trains, and they all found each other because we've got this online community. So this is sort of where it all began, was with AOL, and you would do, anybody remember the commercials that they would have? Anybody who was advertising anything, AOL keyword Chevy, and Chevy had paid a lot of money to be on AOL. And AOL keyword GE, or what have you. And then the NFL kind of, for me, broke AOL when they said AOL keyword NFL.com. I was like, .com? What is .com? And I realized that there's this whole other internet world. This is like 96. Whole other internet world outside of AOL. And I remember when the internet was one of several competing networks. Anybody remember BitNet? Anybody old enough to remember the BitNet? It was basically what is now the Google user groups and all these discussion groups. And there was BitNet and there was internet, and they were competing networks. And I actually thought, well, BitNet's the way to go. This internet thing is stupid. And I'm not good at future casting, so why I'm giving this talk, I don't know. I was upset when the Colts released Jim Harbaugh as a quarterback back in the 90s, and they turned it over to this like punk rookie quarterback from Tennessee. I was like, who turns their whole offense over to a rookie quarterback? This guy's gonna flop in 2 years. Peyton Manning. So yeah, I'm not a good prognosticator when it comes to future talent. So anyway, where was I? Anyway, we started going outside of AOL to find things, and I learned about Netscape, the first internet browser, and I got that, and I was like, screw AOL, there's better stuff outside. And I started doing that kind of internet networking. And so at the time I worked for a small company. We sold poultry feeding equipment and feeding supplies and reflective insulation and feed enzymes and all these things. We sold them overseas. And this was our very first website. I had to go to archive.org to find this, and I was embarrassed that I could. I made this site myself. And it's my eternal shame that you all get to see it today. But it was my father-in-law's company, and there were like 4 of us working for him. And my other brother-in-law, he and I had to basically beg my father-in-law to let us get a website. We had to buy a domain name for $200 and then put a website on it. And he fought us the entire way. and we put it up, and 3 weeks later, we get this phone call from a guy in Australia, and he says, how much is your reflective insulation? And this is the stuff with the bubble wrap and the 2 layers of aluminum on either side, and we gave him a price, and he said, I'll call you back, and he hung up. And he calls us back the next day, and he places an order for a container load, a 40-foot shipping container load of this stuff. And we're like, this is great, because it's like $30,000. And we said, why did you have to go so suddenly yesterday? And he said, well, I had placed an order with your competitor, and then after I did, I went and searched online, and I found your web page. And so I called you, and your price was half of what I was going to pay, and I had to call and cancel the order. And so, complete serendipity that he found us, but he found us. And after that one big order, you would have thought that my father-in-law had invented the internet for us to put a web page on. He's like, it's a good thing I told those guys to put a web page up. Yeah, that's how that worked. But that was sort of, we got better. My brother-in-law became a web designer, and he actually went to work for Biomet. They make artificial hip replacement. Anybody got an artificial hip replacement? Don't tell me. But in Warsaw, Indiana, 4 of the 5 major joint replacement companies are all in Warsaw, little tiny Warsaw, about 30,000 people. And before he left, Joe made this website for us. And I started doing internet marketing. This is 1998. And we started selling reflective insulation to people who wanted to put it in their houses. And no one had done this before. No one had put reflective insulation in their houses, except for the poultry farmers who knew what it did. And they would order a couple extra rolls, and they would put it up in their attic. And so we thought, well, we could tell people to do that. And so I put up a web page, or a few web pages, and I started talking about and just writing about, here's how you use reflective insulation. And people would send in questions, and I would turn that question, I would actually put frequently asked questions, because those were questions people actually did ask frequently. You ever notice how most FAQs these days, like, nobody asks that question? How do I order? No one asks. Don't lie. But these were questions, and I would answer them, and I would tell everybody everything they needed to know. And I've been a humor writer for about 22 years, and so I made sure everything was funny. And would put jokes on the web page. I had one page, I did this as a test, so all you SEO guys might like this. I had a page of frequently used terms, and then a second page of frequently used construction terms, and you could only get to the second page if you got to the bottom of the first page. And I didn't put the second page anywhere, I didn't list it on our website. You had to find it by accident, and then at the very bottom of this page of frequently used construction terms, I had a joke. What's the difference between a joist and a girder? The answer is Joyce wrote Ulysses and Goethe wrote Faust. Sorry, word nerd thing. And I said, if you found this joke and place an order, I will give you 10% off your order. You just have to tell me you found it. And then I would check the web logs, because that's all we had in those days were web logs, like this many people visited your page. And I would count the number of people who submitted the joke, or submitted the thing, and the number of people who visited the page, and I found that about 1 out of 20 visitors per day were telling me that they found the joke. And I knew that they must have gotten to the bottom of the page, because this was not well done. It was like a list of questions that you could click and go to the answer. You had to read the whole thing. And I knew that at least 1 out of 20 people were reading the entire thing. They found the hidden second page and found the joke at the bottom of this hidden second page. So I knew that they were reading what I was saying. So I had to be interesting, and I had to make it good. I put in the instructions. I wrote our installation instructions. And I remember putting in the instructions, this product is metal. You can cut it with scissors, but don't use the good scissors. And I would have people email me and say, oh, I'm glad you put that in there. I was going to use the good scissors. My wife would have been pissed. Anybody grow up with good scissors in your house? Or do you have them now? You know not to use the good scissors? My mom had the good scissors. We could not use, she would get so mad at us. You used the good scissors. I was cutting paper. Those are the good scissors. So I would do these kinds of things and people would respond to that. And we were selling a lot of insulation. What's funny is we were selling it at a full retail price, but when you sold into the poultry market, it was so cutthroat. You'd make maybe $10 a roll. Retail, we'd make $100 a roll in profit. And all of our competitors were like, I don't know why you guys are on that internet. It's not going to go anywhere. And you guys are selling 3 rolls per order. We're making more in a 3-roll order than they're making for like 40 rolls sometimes. And we just let them think that's what we were doing. Like we were making the same margin on these tiny orders that they were making on these large orders. And we didn't tell them for years. In fact, I don't think I ever told them. They finally figured it out and bottomed out our market by continuing to make the same margins. But when we joined the internet in about 1996 with this monstrosity, you'd have thought that it's like Jack sold the family cow to get the magic beans, because people are like, you're on the internet? Who's going to do things on the internet? I'm not on the internet. You look at the state of the poultry industry now, like the manufacturing people, it's still 1998 for a lot of them. They've got maybe a website, like they begrudgingly put one up. The VP's nephew did it. Anybody that guy? Or woman, like you got hired by your uncle's company to make a web page? We ended up, when we started this thing with this internet selling, our insulation sales were 5% of our total sales. 4 years later, because I was doing what at the time we didn't know was content marketing, but by doing that, we got to over half of our company's sales was just off of this. 3 rolls at a time, but dozens of orders per week. And I was doing it all by phone too. We didn't have one of those fancy shopping carts. To buy a shopping cart in like 2002 was $10,000. Now it's a free plugin on WordPress. But the thing that I was doing, and I didn't realize it until like 4 years ago, I was doing content marketing. We didn't call it content marketing, or digital marketing, or internet marketing, or push marketing, or pull marketing. Back then, you know what we called it? Anybody guess? Marketing. It was just marketing online. And so that, to me, this has been kind of funny to watch how all of these different forms of marketing have these new terms, and we're supposed to call it by this latest new jargony term. It's still marketing. How many people are marketers? Forget the digital part. Like you came up through the people who were on AOL and are as older than the internet. You are straight up marketers. And we just have a new way to do this. We're not doing brochures and TV ads and magazine ads anymore. We're online. That's sort of been what the future of content marketing has been, just the future of marketing in general. So when we talk about what is the future of digital marketing, there's a few things that we have to think about, and a few things that are happening to our industry. One of them is called content shock. Anybody heard the term content shock? Mark Schaefer, in 2014, he wrote this article that just frightened the hell out of a lot of us, and he called it the Beware of the Content Shock, or the future. He talked about, the future of content shock. Content shock basically says that we as people, we as human beings, we consume 10 hours of content. And I hate that phrase so much. I hate that I just said consume content. That's a terrible phrase. We should just never say that. We take in, we absorb, we read and listen to and watch 10 hours of content a day. So that's listening to the news on your way to work, listening to podcasts while you work out. You watch TV when you get home. You read reports and blogs and websites at work, and you read books, and all these things we do for 10 hours a day. And for the most part, for the last 100 years, maybe less than that because we didn't have TV, but we watch radio shows or listen to radio shows. We took in 10 hours of content per day, and that's it, and that number is not going to change. If you find a new TV show you like, do you add that to the long list of TV we're watching? No, we replace something. If you find a new series on Netflix, do you add that to the long list of things you're watching on Netflix? No, we binge watch it until we're done, and then we move on to the next one. But we stay at 10 hours per day. But the content production is increasing. There's more TV shows, there's more podcasts, there's more news programs. NPR and PRI are creating new shows all the time, and there's no time to listen to the new ones without replacing the old ones. There are more books being published. I think it's like 200,000 books per year being published. It might be more than that, more like 400,000 books. You gonna read 400,000 books? No. When I first wrote Branding Yourself in 2009, Kyle and I wrote Twitter Marketing for Dummies in 2009. 2010 was Branding Yourself. And in those days, nobody was writing social media books. Nowadays, it's hard to come up with an idea that has not been written about for social media. And so the odds of writing a social media book for Pearson or Wiley are slim, because there are hundreds and hundreds of social media books. But what Mark Schaefer was saying was that by the year 2020, and this is 2014 that he's saying this, by the year 2020, the internet, the size of, or the amount of information on the internet will increase by 600%. So if you take all the information we have available on the internet, we call that one internet of information. That's all the web pages and blog posts and photos and tweets and the Internet of Things, all of their stuff, and you post a photo on Instagram. Not only is your Instagram post a piece of information, but the photo itself actually occupies, in a hidden way, occupies its own page on the internet. An Instagram photo takes at least 2 pages of information. So you take all of that information in 2014, that's one internet of information, and we're going to add 6 more of those in the year 2020. Basically, from the year 2014 to 2015, we doubled the size of the internet. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of content. But we are not going to make time and space to take in that extra information. That's this gap. So the amount of content keeps going up, and the amount that we take in is going to stay the same, and we're going to get buried. And we as content creators, our stuff is going to get buried. That means that you could spend 3 weeks crafting the most perfect, wonderful blog post. It's going to change lives. It's going to, it's great for weight loss, and I'm going to grow my hair back, and it's going to walk my dog, and it's going to get buried by just tons and tons of crap. Try not to say bad words, because I know where I am. Anybody okay with that? Like, am I going to offend you? Going to run screaming out of the room? I'll still restrain. So where is this content coming from? It's not just more people creating stuff, but it's Robo Writers. It's software that will create all of this extra content. And so there were stories. Even a few years ago, the Associated Press in 2014 started writing stories with software. And if you look at Forbes, the monthly and the quarterly financial performance reports from all of these companies that are publicly traded, they have to release these reports. And they're all written by this robot software. And the Associated Press started switching to that. And I believe minor league baseball, all of their stories are now being done by robots. And so we can write, with these robot writers, we can write 5 million stories in a single week. And here's the stupid thing about it. The stupid thing is, me as a human writer, somebody whose profession, whose very lifeblood is all about writing. I mean, it's my day job, it's my side job, and it's my hobby. I don't get out much because I love writing. That's all I do. I couldn't compete with 5 million stories a week. My story is going to get buried. But their thinking is, anybody who uses this, their thinking is, we are going to write 5 million stories a week and we are going to get one person to read each one of those stories. Like, my goal is to write one awesome story that 5 million people read. Their idea is we're going to write 5 million stories that one person is going to each read. That's how they're going to get 5 million readers. So it's 5 million to 1. How am I going to compete against that? So there are two companies. One is Narrative Science. The other one is Automated Insights. Automated Insights. Anybody play fantasy football besides Kellen? Anybody play Yahoo Fantasy Football? A couple of you. Do you read your after game report? That's written by Automated Insights. I didn't finish my thought earlier. Forbes is using Robo Writers for those quarterly reports, and Automated Insights, I believe, is the writer of those. I remember when the AP shifted all that story writing over to India. Like, we had been using interns and entry-level reporters, cub reporters, to write that stuff in the 90s, and then they offshored it to India, and everybody's like, no, that's terrible. It needs to stay with American writers. And then they switched over to a piece of software that you basically drop a quarter in the machine and it spits out all these stories. And the Indians are all going, no, that's terrible. What about humans? And so Forbes is using it. Minor League Baseball is using it. Your kids' Little League system can use it. Yahoo Fantasy Football uses it. And so at the end of every week, after both teams have played, they put together a story. And I'll put story in quotes because it's not a story. It's a list of sentences all mashed together in a single paragraph. If you read this story, I don't know if you can actually read it. I won this week. I made sure that I didn't win very much. So I made sure to select a week that I won by a lot because I suck at fantasy football. My daughter is 21. She's doing like 2 and 3 leagues per year. I'm doing 1. She's beating everybody on all those leagues. She beats me every year. Not this year. I think I got smart. But I made sure to pick a week that I won. If you read this story, but imagine as you read it, it's not a paragraph. It's a list of bullet points. And the story flows just as well. This is not a story. This is not, this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and because of that, this thing happened, but the other thing could have happened, but this happened. It's not that kind of story. This is just sentence, 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 sentence. Doesn't mean anything. That's the kind of stuff they do. Anybody play Mad Libs when you were a kid? Just a few of you? Like the rest of you lying? This is like Mad Libs for, I don't know, for stats nerds. Because what happens is they have a list, it's almost like it's fill in the blank. Blank team defeated other team. So we put in the 2 teams, which team won, which team lost. And then defeated is a verb, but depending on the point spread, we're going to put in squeaked by, eked out, barely won, or we're going to say spanked and demolished and hammered, and however big that point spread is, that's going to affect the word that we put in here. And then we've got, the Indianapolis Beagles quarterback surpassed expectations, barely met expectations, fell below expectation. So all of these sentences are predetermined, and they got this pool of phrases and words that they're going to use based on the numbers that they pull out of the system. So now, minor league baseball with, the few hundred teams that they've got in all the divisions, they don't have people writing those stories anymore. It's one single piece of software. So for me, what I do is I make sure that I do the kinds of things that the software can't do. I write opinion pieces. I write kind of an analysis, but kind of a projected analysis. Here's what's going to happen if we do these things, or here's what could happen if we don't do these things. I wrote an article a few years ago about stop telling students said is dead. Because high school teachers were telling their English high school teachers, no, high school English teachers, that's the difference, were telling their students, stop writing said when you're writing stories. Don't say said, say laughed or shouted or cried or something else, because that's boring to say said all the time. But all the professional writers and all the college writing instructors are saying, no, that's terrible advice. Don't tell them said is dead. Make them use said, because that's the word that we skim over and we don't notice. And so I wrote that article. Do you think a piece of software could have written this article? Probably not, because there's no formula to follow. Flu.gov. Anybody remember the swine flu and bird flu thing? I used to work for the Indiana State Health Department when we were worried about bird flu. And my first day, if you remember the TV movie where, like bird flu wiped out half the earth and they were digging giant pits and pushing bodies into that, I saw that movie the day before I started working there. And I hated my job from then on. It's like, we're gonna die from something. I was considered a first responder. Like if there was an anthrax attack and they had everybody lining up to get the antibiotics, they said, don't worry about standing in line. We'll have your medication set aside for you. And I said, why? And they said, we expect you to be on scene dealing with the media. Because I was the media coordinator. They're like, you're going to be on scene. I was like, wonderful. Do I get a mask? No. So anyway, in fact, I left the health department and I went to work at the company that I now own, and I was sitting in a restaurant when swine flu broke out. When they announced that the U.S. had its first case of swine flu, and of all places to be sitting, I was in the Buffalo Wild Wings. I was eating chicken wings when they said that the swine flu was going to kill us. I was like, wonderful. But flu.gov, it's the government's website for H1N1. And it was originally H5N1. This is not necessarily something that we want to rely on software for. I don't want software telling me information. I need experts doing it. And yes, the software compiled that expert information, but are they going to be able to present it in a way that's creative and interesting? The CDC decided to be creative and interesting about flu preparation. I don't know if anybody remembers this. This was back in 2014, 2013, when they talked about zombies. And they said, zombies are going to get us. And if you look at the swine flu, what they told us to prevent swine flu is to prevent it, you cough and sneeze into your elbow, you wash your hands after you blow your nose, and you make sure you shelter in place for 30 days with enough food, water, and medicine. Nobody was listening to that, so they said, hey, zombies. And everybody's like, we love zombies. How do we prevent zombie attacks? And they said, well, first you make sure you sneeze and cough into your elbows, and you wash your hands after you sneeze, and make sure you shelter in place with enough food, water, and medicine for 30 days. And everyone was pissed because it's like, oh, damn it, I learned something. That's awful. So what does the future hold for content marketing? Nothing. There is no future of content marketing. Why? Because it's the same as it has always been. Content marketing and any kind of information that we present has always been about words and images and sounds. Always. Always and forever, it's been words, images, and sounds. Before we had a written language, it was just images and sounds. We told stories. And we storytellers, and that used to be a real job. I wish I had that job. It's not like the guys with the big beards at the storytelling festivals making $30, hoping to get enough gas to go home. We told stories, and this is how we learned things as a society. And you heard a story, and you repeated the story to other people, and that's how we learned. And now we're still doing words, images, and sounds, and the future is going to be words, images, and sounds. Facebook will go away one day. Remember AOL? They grew like millions and millions of people. They bought Time Warner, and then several years later, Time Warner spun off their tiny AOL division. Facebook's going to go away one day. Twitter's going to go away one day. We're going to have something to replace blogging. The stuff that we're talking about today in 20 years will probably be gone. But we will still be working in words, images, and sounds. And so the tools will change, but the idea of what we put in is going to be the same. And so we have to be good at it. We have to practice. We have to make sure that we write better than everybody else. This is Ernest Hemingway as a young man. The guy wrote and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote until his stories were the best they could be. And that's what we have to do. We're still going to take pictures. This was barely, when I did the second edition of Branding Yourself, Snapchat was a thing that teenagers used. And like disreputable teenagers who were doing nasty things with their phone. And they liked Snapchat because the evidence disappeared, and then we all learned that it didn't. And Instagram. My friend Natasha summoned a demon and took a picture of it. Everybody tweet Natasha Samrini, S-A-M-R-E-N-Y, at Natasha Samrini, saw a photo of your demon cat at Confluence Con. Tweet, like, do that now. I want her to get like 50 tweets. Natasha Samrini, saw your demon cat. And we're still going to listen to stuff. Podcasting is in its golden age right now. We have more people listening to podcasts than ever before. People say that 15 years ago was podcasting's golden age. It's not. It's now. I think more people listen to podcasts than the radio sometimes. So what are we going to do? How are we going to face the future of content marketing? As long as we're doing words, images, and sounds, there are things that we can do better than machines. That we can do better than the people who stayed at home. Better than the people who worked for good enough. They write something, and they say, well, that's good enough, and they publish it. I know, I won't call them writers, typers. I know typers who they publish a blog post every day. If you do this, I apologize. But they publish a blog post every day, which is fine. But they brag about the fact that they wrote all 5 blog posts in 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon while the game was on. And they said, this is my method. I sit and football game's on, and I write all 5 blog posts. They're like 500 words apiece, maybe 400. They're spending 40 minutes per blog post while they're distracted, and they publish that every day. And they're like, this is awesome. No, that's not awesome. That's terrible. And we can see it. And you should be ashamed. And you shouldn't tell people that you do this in 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon. You should hide that fact. It's like looking at porn. We don't tell people, I look at porn. You know, we hide that. Or at least maybe you hide. I don't do that. That's terrible. But you should be ashamed that you wrote 5 blog posts in 2 hours. So we have to be better. We have to be better than those people. We have to be better than the machines, for sure. Anybody remember the story of John Henry, the steel driving man? He died trying to beat the machine that could drive steel better than him. He beat it, and then he died. And then they fixed the machine. And they're like, screw you, John Henry, we got this machine here. We have to be better than the machines, and we have to be better than the people who think good enough is fine. So be better. You want to be good at content marketing and at digital marketing, be better than everybody else. I have been a writer for, 30 years. Anybody not yet 30? Like, this is how old I feel. My writing career is older than you. I think I have t-shirts older than you. But I, every day, think I am not good enough. And that's like my own, like, crippling insecurity, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm always working to get better. I practice, I read a lot. I don't read content marketing blogs. I read books by authors who are way better than I am, and I work to be better every day. We can be the experts. I help my clients be seen as experts in their field. I help them be found online through great blogging content, and once they are found, I help them look like they know what they're talking about. And I make them be seen as the expert in their field. And so their customers come to them because they got all the answers. And so we need to do that for our clients and for our colleagues in this field, but we need to be the experts by writing interesting content, original research, and not this Me Too stuff. None of this, write great content as secrets. Be human. That means talk like a real person. This is a sentence I found in the wild once. Not like on a tree, but actually on the internet. We will leverage end-user learnings on a going-forward basis. What the hell does that mean? We'll use what you learned from now on. I got in an argument with the guy who wrote this. We have created a frictionless user onboarding experience. I said, that's too long, that's too many big words. He said, no, this is accurate. I said, you know what else is accurate? Signing up is easy. When I got my mom to join Facebook, she did not ask me if Facebook had a frictionless user onboarding experience. She said, is it easy to sign up? I said, yes, Mom, it's easy to sign up. Be exclusive. Offer the things that nobody else is offering. It could be a newsletter. Give people a special white paper. This is a white paper that nobody else is going to get except you, but you can only get it if you sign up for my newsletter, where we will give you other things that we don't give people. P. Allen Smith, the home and garden guy on PBS, he's got 2 PBS shows. He takes extra videos of his shows and puts that on his YouTube channel. And then there's Marriott. There are 2 Bellman movies. They've made 3 of these movies. These are like big budget productions. I don't think like Best Western is going to be doing a movie like this anytime. I think like their entire marketing budget is like as much as Marriott's movie budget. But they make these great short movies that in and of themselves are great short movies. And they're entertaining, and they're barely commercials for Marriott, but they're, you see the hotel. The hotel is the backdrop, and they're gorgeous hotels, and you get to see this and see all the adventures that the 2 Bellmen are having. GE is doing comic books. You remember the old science comic books that we got in school? They are relaunching those. Be collaborative. That means work with people who can do what you can't do. Like Red Bull and GoPro. You remember they kicked that guy out of the capsule 24 miles above the earth? They collaborated because Red Bull just does weird stuff and GoPro takes video evidence of it. And they said, hey, let's have this guy jump out of a capsule. So I can't remember what they were, but he set 3 world records by doing this, like the highest free fall and highest plummeting to the earth and surviving or something. Be leaders. Go where the other people aren't. Go where your competitors aren't. If you've got a website, or if they've got a website, you start a blog. If they've got a blog, you start a podcast. If they've got a podcast, you do a video podcast. It's the Chicago way. Any Untouchables fans? They what is it? They kill a guy with a knife, you kill him with a gun. So, create video podcasts, but do something that everybody else is not, and be the leader in that particular channel. This is why you should explore new channels, because if you can win that particular one, you're going to be the thought leader in that channel. So, the 3 rules. What are the 3 rules about the future of content marketing? Number 1 is you're going to be more. Of all these things I told you, be more of that. If you're trying to be better, be more better, because that's proper English, and we say those things. If you're trying to be a leader, be more of a leader. If you want to be an expert, be more of an expert. But be more. Not more quantity, more quality. Work with people smarter than you. That means if you're not a writer, hire a writer. Hire a professional writer. If you're a beginning writer, get somebody who's better than you and have them coach you. If you are not great at numbers, I'm terrible at numbers. My wife handles the books at home. I have no idea how much money I have. She does. And she tells me not to buy things. And that's when I know I can't spend money. She said, don't spend any money. I don't look at my bank account and go, I shouldn't buy that. I look at my credit card and go, I could buy that. And so she's like the safety on don't buy things. She's smarter about that than I am. Get those people in your life. And then finally, lead the way. Be the leader in whatever channel you can find. Be the leader on whatever topic or niche you can create, and do it better than everybody else. Ultimately, like I said, it's all about words and images and sounds. And if you can do those better than everybody else, that's what the future of digital marketing is going to hold. So if you've got any questions or you want to find me later, ericdeckers.com, that's my humor site. I'm a weekly newspaper humor columnist. You can find me there. You can find problogservice.com. I talk about things like this. And if you've got questions, I will be here. I was going to say all week, but I'll be here for both days. Please ask me questions, tweet me questions, email me questions, and then wait for my book in October. Thank you very much.